Hello everyone, it's Jayma Malme here with a double page scrapbook layout for you. We're going to be doing some fun inking techniques today on our background and on our die cuts, and we'll be having lots of fun. I'm going to be using this wood grain paper pack. It's called Country Woods, and I've been dying to use this multicolor paper, but I haven't had pictures that went with it yet. So I'm really excited that these photos will work, and then I'm going to be pairing it with these more solid color ones that match. Trying to decide what order to put them in. I think I'm going to put this darker one in the middle to kind of separate those, the pattern and the lighter color, and I think I like that. I'm sticking with sort of a sketch that is a go-to for me. It's always great to work with go-to patterns because you know they always work, and that is when I have 3 or 4 portrait orientation photos like this, I like to just have them go across the page like you see them here and have a more linear design with strips of paper across the bottom. So this isn't exactly something I've done before, this exact sketch, but it's, you know, sort of along the same lines. And I was very inspired by a layout that Chelsey for a Smarty created a little bit ago, and I'll link her video down below so you can see her version. Now, the first inking technique I'm going to do is on this strip of paper. So I was trying to point out, and it's probably kind of hard to see, especially if you're watching this on a small screen, but there is a piece behind the bed that has this sort of like corally look to it. It's like these round shapes. And there's this piece in this Seaside Wishes stamp set that has kind of a stone, like a stacked stone look. And I thought that it mimicked that design that's behind the bed. So I am going to stamp that across this whole piece, and it looks so cool. It's a very subtle nod, but I think that, you know, all the details add up in a scrapbook layout or any project, and I love focusing on details. It's just something that I have a lot of fun with. And then the second inking treatment I'm going to do is on these coral pieces. These are from the Beauty of the Deep die set. I've used them many times before. I just love the shape and the airiness and the texture that they add to a project. And I did not have the early espresso color that is in this kit. I could have cut the wood grain paper, but I decided just to cut some espresso cardstock, which I had from close to my heart, and then I added a little bit of inking on top of it to darken it, and that kind of gives it a two-tone look. And then for these peach pieces, these are like little corally pieces that are from Seaside Wishes. I'm kind of going back and forth between Seaside Wishes and the Beauty of the Deep. And those peach coral pieces were from Seaside Wishes, and did a little bit of inking on those. And now these are some embossed and die cut pieces. They are sand dollars from Seaside Wishes. There is a stamp that will go along with these, but I like to just cut them out with the hybrid embossing folder. It gives them embossing and cuts them out at the same time so your embossing doesn't get squished. And then very lightly go over it just to kind of bring out some of that detail. It is a little bit hard to catch that detail in the video, but it's definitely more obvious in person. So now it's time to pull all of these little die cut pieces together, and I cut basically at least three of each piece so that I could have one of each in each cluster. That way you're drawing the eye across the page with all of the same colors and types of embellishments. That's how I like to do it. And then I'm also going to be adding to these clusters by stamping on the background and doing some inking splatters. And then I'll end up coming back in with more die cuts at the end, because you know what always happens is I just can't put my finger on what a layout needs, and I step away for a bit and then come back and it's obvious to me. So that's what happened with this layout too. So you'll see my whole progression. Now I'm finally remembering to show you what these sets look like. So here is the Beauty of the Deep set. It is a red rubber stamp. It has some really cool dies that go along with it. And I'm going to be stamping that long kelp image on the background. And then here's the Seaside Wishes set, the stamps and dies. So this is something that I took from Chelsey's video, although she did it in a different color. I didn't think I wanted to bring in any lime green like she did, but it turns out that I did, and that will be added later. So right now I'm using Glacier ink. That's the closest match I had, and that is a close to my heart color. And I'm going to stamp this kind of long kelp image coming out from my clusters. I really, really love this stamp image. It's probably my favorite one in that Beauty of the Deep set because it adds height. It's such a great way to add height to your clusters, which just adds so much interest, and it's going to add even more interest when I add the die cuts and some green in them later on. I thought it needed just a little bit more back there, so I took the blending brush and added some Glacier ink to the background to kind of create a glow around my embellishment clusters. And I like how that looked. You're going to keep seeing me adding inking and more treatments, but it really isn't until the end that I realized this is really what this needed. These photos that I'm documenting are not the most exciting photos, but it is necessary to document as part of our vacation because we stayed in this really beautiful suite. This was our room when we were in the Riviera Maya, Mexico, for the incentive trip that I got to go on that I earned from Close to My Heart. And truth be told, the photos are not actually my photos. I stole them from Erin. Thanks, Erin, because I forgot to take photos of our room before we had our stuff all over the place. So our rooms were exactly the same. So that worked out nicely, and I'm glad that she remembered to take the photos. All right, so I'm starting to add some of those other little round corally pieces that are from the Seaside Wishes set. I ended up cutting some in Glacier as well because, like I mentioned, I kept thinking this needs something else, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So I just kept adding, and I do love how all of this came together because I do love a lot of layers and am happy with all of the layers. I pulled out this Secret Garden sticker sheet, and there was a little word sticker on here that worked nicely, and I'll pull in one of the peach little stickers here where I'll end up stamping on it. And I think I'll add this little sticker here too. There are just a few little peach pieces on that sticker sheet that ended up working here. And this little heart will look cute there next to the title. And I'm liking the way that everything is flowing, but again, it's still missing something. We'll get there. So I pulled out another set that I'll show you in a little bit, but these little tiny shells are from another beach set, and I inked a little bit on them in that same Glacier and Peach, and I cut them out of what was left over from embossing the sand dollars. There was kind of like this sand texture on that panel, and so I cut these little shells out where there was the texture. So it's really hard to see, but there is a little bit of texture on them too. So I scattered those around the page. And then in the Beauty of the Deep, there's also this little tiny coral piece. So I'm putting those in the clusters as well, one or two of them in each cluster. And I cut those out of, it was either acorn or toffee, more of a light brown. And trying to figure out where this last little shell is going to go. I think maybe I'll tuck it right up here. All right, in an effort to fill some of that white space at the top, I'm going to splatter some ink with my early espresso ink pad and a water brush. Now, I was at a friend's house here, so this is what I used to improvise. I wanted to use my Espresso Shimmer Brush, but I didn't have it, so I did this, and I was a little scared to go heavy-handed, so I didn't do a ton, but also what was there dried back so much lighter because it was watered down a bit. So I am going to do what I can here at my friend's house, and then I'm going to come back and finish the layout at home. Here's that little shell die that I was showing you earlier. It's from this Beach Day die set. And then I'm going to add my little gems here. These are the same gems that Chelsey used on her layout, and I loved how they looked. They're like little squished iridescent pearls almost, and I think they look kind of beachy to me. They're really fun. And so as soon as I saw her use them on a beach layout, I knew that I had to use them as well. So I'm scattering them around the page. And then once I get home, I'm going to be adding my journaling down underneath my photos on the right side. And I'll show you how I finish off this page. So first of all, I knew I needed some darker splatters in the corners, so I took my Espresso Shimmer Brush. Even though it's not the exact same color, it worked beautifully, and I splattered that in the corners up in the same areas where I had it before, only now it's going to show up even better. And it also adds a little bit of shimmer, which I didn't have anywhere on the layout, and you know how I love my shimmer. So now that that's done, and I had to be very careful not to dip my layout into that ink on my all-purpose mat. So we've got that. That's showing up a little better. And then I also stamped Enjoy on that little sticker tab. Now, this is where I took another cue from Chelsey's layout, and I realized I really need to add some pops of green to this layout. It's just kind of blah with the colors, and then I'm bringing in these little kelp images that I actually stamped and die cut out this time, and that's going to add even more height to these little embellishment clusters. Now, I did point out that there is a little green plant in the bathroom, and once I start adding this bright green, I think that it really helps that photo in particular to stand out a little bit better too. The beauty of the deep set also has these little small kind of kelp sprig images, and I have used these before, and I talked about how they're probably an overlooked stamp in that set, but they are so useful for just adding little bits of color here and there, and that I think is exactly what this layout needed. So I'm going to play with adding a couple pieces of kelp here, but I just didn't end up liking it because they're exactly the same and kind of shaped the same way, and I wasn't liking how they were working. Now, my green kelp ended up covering up the one that I stamped on the background, but I liked it closer to the photo, so I'm going to stamp that one on the background again, but just a little bit over where I was trying to put that second one, and we'll stamp it right here. Luckily, I was able to lift up those little embellishments to get under there. And then I wanted to add a little bit of the ink blending behind there again, since that got covered up too, except I forgot to tap off of my paper first, so I got a little bit more harsh of a look there than I was going for. It will dry back a little bit, but it did end up getting a little darker than I wanted. But you know what? That's okay. So here is how that all turned out, and overall I'm happy with it. I think that adding the journaling down underneath the photos helped to balance things out, and I think the splatters helped. Now, if you'd like to see the other layout that I created with a lot of the same supplies from this trip, then check out the video on screen now and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more scrapbooking videos. Thanks for watching.